So in order to try and save my first marriage, I decided to go to therapy. And I remember the therapist asking me what makes me happy. She said I couldn't answer with anything with my ex-wife or my kids, and I couldn't answer at all because I realized I hadn't been happy in a long time. I kind of felt like, part of being a man and being a married person with children was to suffer through the unhappiness, and that was kind of my duty. You just be a man, you take it as you go, and just make sure your family's taken care of, make sure you stay in the same house as your children. And really my happiness was really a no concern to me. But through therapy and through some other tools and techniques and resources I got, I was able to get to a better place, a more stable place, a more peaceful place that I'm in now. Depression is something that I'll always deal with my whole life, but it's much more manageable now. I have tools and techniques and things I can do to alleviate, the feelings, and they don't last as long now. They really don't come as often unless I'm thinking about, someone that's passed or something like that. But through the years and being on social media and things like that, people have asked me consistently about, depression and anxiety and things like that. They seem surprised that I've been through it. They seem surprised that I talk about it, which I get because it's kind of a taboo thing to talk about, especially in the Black community. It's kind of, you just brush it under the rug. You don't want to get seen as being crazy or anything like that. So this is my depression journey. This is my journey through getting to a better place, a more peaceful place, and some of the techniques and procedures I've gotten to use over time, I've learned, and adapted on, that got me into a place where I can talk about it now. I feel all right with it now. I wish I had something I could look at when I was going through it to identify how I was feeling and get myself to a better place sooner. But thank goodness, I was able to get there anyway, and I was able to, get some professional help and get some tools on my own to be better. But in addition to me talking about it, I feel like, I'm just one person. I'm not a professional. I've enlisted my friend, Seneca Pender. He's a licensed therapist, and after my video, he comes with his professional opinion on the signs of depression, techniques to get through it, and I think it'll be real helpful. At least that's my hope for a lot of people. And even if I can just get one person to know, like, there's life after feeling like this, life does get better, then I feel like I've done my job. So here's my depression. I have my glasses on for this video because that really hides my eyes, because this is really, I've just been able to start talking about this, and I've dealt with depression for a long time. When I was dealing with it, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was called. I just knew, like, I didn't feel right. So my first recollection of dealing with depression was when I was hustling. And it wasn't an all-the-time thing, an everyday thing. It just hit me every once in a while. Normally when I was drinking. I think alcohol is a depressant, and I think it brings out a lot of things that are inside of you, like when you drink. So occasionally when I would drink, I would get real sad, real depressed. Probably also because I knew I was doing something I really shouldn't have been doing, but I like doing it. It's kind of like the yin and the yang. Something that my family, I felt like, raised me better than, my grandmother, my mother, my aunts and everybody, my uncles. I had a huge family, and I'm not saying we were better or worse than anyone else, but I wasn't raised like that. I was a person that did real well in school, and everyone probably thought, he's gonna, just follow this track and be, on the straight and narrow and have a family with a picket fence and a corporate job and all these things. And that was never really, I won't say never, but it was something that I wasn't sure if I wanted for myself. Just because I was good in school, I didn't feel like, that meant that, my life was this path right here. But that's the path of success that, I've been taught and I learned, and not saying that's the wrong thing. I just wasn't sure it was for me. So in these instances, where we used to drink excessively, everything about hustle life is excessive pretty much. When you're making money and you're young and you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want to do, we went excessive for everything. So all me and my people, we drank a lot. But with that drinking came, these feelings I had. And, it was hard to deal with, but I kind of just suppressed it, just kept going. That's all you can do. Anyway, that's all I knew at the moment. Never talked to nobody about it. I just kept it inside of me. And then when I moved from Rhode Island to South Carolina, that's when it really kicked in, because it was real tough for me to leave my whole family, leave my grandmother, leave my mother, leave all my friends, pretty much everything I've ever known, and move to a place that I've only visited a couple times. I ain't got no family down there. I don't have no friends down there. I was just moving with my ex-wife and my children at the time. And then when I got there, if that wasn't bad enough, after a couple of days, I looked around to the place we were visiting, and I thought would be, a good place to set up our family. And I realized it was anything but that. It was Black Mayberry, it was the Black Hood, it was all the things that, I had felt like I had progressed past already. I wasn't, I come from the projects, but I didn't live in the projects, I didn't live in the hood. I was able to, live in a different space and allow my children to experience, something different was big for me. It still is big for me. So moving to this place and adjusting to not only the South, my first time living there, first time going there since, I went briefly at Tuskegee University for a year. It was a lot for me to adjust to. I'm adjusting to being away from my people. I'm adjusting to trying to blend into this corporate life that never felt like it was a fit for me. It felt like I had to be a different character to be accepted, to get the money, to take care of my family. It was definitely a conflicting feeling of emotions doing it. And I just kept all that inside. Not to mention that me and my ex were going through the worst of the worst, a lot of toxic experiences. Probably any experience you could think of. My mind was just in a completely different place. And it just progressed and got worse and worse and worse through me and my ex's relationship. I really started to resent her, and the fact for me even being in that position. Not saying it was her fault, but that was just my mindset at the time. I resented, being there. I resented being away from my family. I resented being away from my friends. I resented the fact that she had family down there and she was able to do whatever she wanted to do. I felt like I was kind of set up. That was just my mindset at the time. And it just steamrolled from there and just got worse and worse. Again, I didn't know what it was called. I just knew that the way I felt inside was not normal. I didn't really know, or I don't even know if I wanted to find a solution to the way I felt. I just was like, this is what men do. We ride it out. We keep it inside. We'll figure out a way. We just keep going. Maybe this is the way life is supposed to be. Maybe this is how it's supposed to feel. Is really how I felt about it. And then fast forward years and years of being in the South and dealing with all these emotions and different things and going through all this love and hip hop type drama with my ex-wife that we were both inflicted. I'm not trying to say it's just on her at that time and soon after, I felt like everything was her fault. But I played my own part in it. I allowed a lot of things to happen that I wasn't for whatever reason. But that's a whole nother different story. But when me and her decided to separate and break up, that's when the depression got a lot worse. I never wanted to be in a house separated from my children. That was big for me. I didn't meet my dad till I was 8 or something like that. It was huge for me. My kids had to be around. That, to me, that wasn't nothing that was negotiable. When you separate, when your situation don't work out, as we all know, that's not really possible. That's not really realistic. So me being separated from my children, me having to move out the house, that me and my ex-wife at the time like put all our energy and effort to. That house symbolized a lot of things for me. It brought me to a dark place, a place I never thought I'd be in. Again, I didn't know what it was called. I just knew I didn't feel right. And there were a lot of days, man, when I moved into my own place where it was hard for me to lift my head up off the pillow. It took everything I had. A lot of times I just sat up in that dark house by myself. A lot of times I go to work and break down. Like, I was cool with, I thought I was cool with, that's another story, but I was cool with a lady at the job that I worked at, and she knew what was going on. Like, she was kind of like my sounding board and my support at the time, because I was reaching out to, whatever positive support I could find, because I really felt like the only positive things around me at the time were my children. I would go to work and just break down in the office. She would calm me down, say some words of encouragement, and I'll go back out there and do it. And this cycle continued for years and years and years. And it just never seemed to get any better. And then, to make matters worse, I started doing some things that they tell you not to do. I went to counseling, but the counselors tell you not to isolate yourself. I isolated myself. They don't really tell, I was never really told not to drink excessively, but that's kind of common sense. Like I said earlier, drinking, brings out emotions. Drinking makes me depressed sometimes. Like, if I'm already in that zone anyway, the more I drink, the more that zone is going to materialize. Started drinking a lot. I just got to a point I didn't care about life no more. So I was doing all type of risky stuff. I was in all type of situations. I really didn't care. Like, the only thing at that point I cared about was my children, is what I kept telling myself. And I just had I just felt like I had a dark cloud hanging over me. And no matter what I did, it was always some BS. I went to bed at night knowing that the next day it was gonna be some BS. I just didn't know what it was. Like, that was just the frame of mind I was in. And just imagine going to bed and just knowing you ain't even got to the next day yet. You're like, man, the next day is gonna be messed up. I just don't know what it's gonna bring. I know it's not gonna be nothing good. And the weekends that I didn't have my children were just off the rails. It was just off the rails. There was always something going on. I was always in a situation I knew I shouldn't have probably been in, but I really did not care at the time. So at that time, depression was like engulfing my life. Like, I just felt like I didn't really have no life. The only semblance of a life I had, like I said, is when I had my children. And in the end, before I left South Carolina, my son stayed with me for like probably 2 years or something like that, which probably saved my life in hindsight. And my oldest daughter, she checked in with me all the time, because my kids knew that their dad wasn't right. They probably didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but they've been around me, forever, their whole life. So they knew I wasn't right. I knew I wasn't right. Matter of fact, the only real shelter I had at the time, going to my brothers and sisters in Charlotte, that saved my life too. You gotta have a place where you can sit down and decompress and have some peaceful thoughts. I can go up there and get peace and not have to worry about nothing. It was so bad that my homeboy in South Carolina demanded a key to my place. Like, he knew that I wouldn't answer the phone, so he'd be calling to check in on me. I'm not answering the phone. I could be anywhere. He knew the type of environments I was in, because he's the one person, or the few people, that I would tell like where I was at, because I just needed someone to know where I was at, just in case some bad shit happened, because bad shit was always happening at the time. So because I didn't answer my phone, like, I'll never forget, he knocked on my door one day and demanded a key, and I thought he was joking. I'm like, thinking to myself, like, you don't pay no bills here. Like, nah, I ain't giving you no key. And he was like, I don't want to come in here and you don't answer the phone. I don't want to come in here and you end up dead, or you hurt yourself or some shit like that. So I ended up giving him a key, which was another smart move and another lesson. You have to have good people, good people around you. Like, that's a must, to have good people around you. Gave him a key. He would check in on me. I wouldn't answer the phone. He would just come up in the door, check in and make sure I was good. And it was a good feeling to know that someone cared about me that much. He wasn't my family. He didn't have no obligation to me, man. It was just out of sheer friendship and love. And that's something that I always will hold deep, because things like that are rare. They don't come around a lot. But from then, in dealing with the depression, I finally got to a point where, like, I wanted to change in my life. I wanted to do something different for my children, because I got tired of them seeing me like that. So I started going to counseling. Got some other techniques. I'm not sure how, but I'm thankful for it. Got in the gym. That was a good outlet for me. Got some other techniques. I started doing meditation. Never thought I would do meditation. That was another thing that saved my life. Got in counseling. They gave me some techniques for dealing with depression. And I read the Secret. No, I watched the movie The Secret. And they talk about your mindset and changing your mindset and doing things like that. I never thought I would get into something like that, because I don't even know how I found The Secret. I think someone posted about it on the internet, saw it. And when I first started, I was like, man, this is going to be some cornball type stuff. But then I really started working on changing my mind and changing my mindset and having a more positive outlook on life no matter what was going on. And eventually, you know, little by little, I started feeling better. My life started changing. I started losing weight. Things didn't seem so bleak. It didn't seem like there was a cloud hanging over me. You know, at moments, I realized that I was the one that controlled my destiny. I realized that I'm the one that controls my thoughts. And depression is a real thing, but I've learned techniques that help me overcome it. And being real, in addition to that, they wanted to put me on medication. I said, nah, like, I don't even really take aspirin. So after not dealing with marijuana, because, you know, when I was younger, I'm not an experimenter. The only thing I ever tried is weed, and I wasn't even really into it like that. But when I was younger and I was hustling, it was more like, you know, an escape, something to do, get high, watch karate flicks, you know, and things like that, just chill out. But now I realized that the medication wasn't going to be the key for me, because I wasn't going to take it. So I started doing research on marijuana. I started realizing it would help me with my anxiety, which I suffered from as well. It got much worse, you know, dealing with what I dealt with in the corporate environment. More on that another time. But I got to the point where when I got to Georgia and I was working for this quote unquote great company, I started having anxiety attacks that I felt like I was gonna die. Like, literally, I could not breathe. My anxiety was crazy, man, because all the stuff I was dealing with, it was high pressure. I felt like I was in a sitcom. I had to be an actor to fit into this place. And the people there weren't genuine. I didn't know who was for me, who was against me, what was going on. To me, it was much worse than the streets. There was no code. It was the Wild Wild West. And I wanted no part of it, but I needed that to be able to take care of my family. So with that, I started, after the doctors tried to prescribe me medication, I started using weed again, and I've realized it helped me with my symptoms. I could literally feel the anxiety go down in my body, you know, when I take it. You know, it just completely put me at peace, and I was able to function and move around. And honestly, like, the last, I don't know, couple months of me being at that plantation, like, I needed that just to go to work. Like, I keep that in my bag. I had gummies in my bag. And I could zip around, you know, the campus and do what I need to do, because doing my work wasn't no problem, ever. Most of my problems were personality related and, you know, just the nonsense I was dealing with. So that's the techniques I came before I came to use to deal with my depression, because my family was so important, and it is so important. It's the most important thing to me. I knew I had to get in a better space, be able to take care of them properly, and even beyond them, I can't take care of no one if I can't take care of me. And in taking care of me, I had to get this depression dealt with. I still deal with it. I probably always deal with it. I have thoughts of my grandmother and other things that happen that sometimes get me in a space out of nowhere. But again, I use breathing techniques, meditation, positive thoughts, with whatever it's going to take in a positive light to get me in a different space. And for anyone suffering from depression, man, like, I was at a point where when I was in South Carolina and I was separated, man, like, I was really choosing between life or death. I didn't really know which one I wanted to choose at the time, because I just wanted the pain to stop. And at that point, that's the only way I thought it would stop. And the only reason I didn't do that at that time is because of my children. I didn't want them to have to deal with, going on with life, knowing that, their dad, killed himself. So depression is a real thing. If you're dealing with it, get some help. I got my man coming on next. He's a licensed psychiatrist, and he's gonna give you some tips and some cues on how to deal with it, get through it, and live your life. And this is my story of depression, man. Like, I probably deal with it my whole life, but now I know that it won't defeat me. I'll beat that just like I beat anything else.
Good afternoon. My name is Seneca Pender, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm coming here to you today to talk about depression. And in talking about depression, I want to talk about some of the symptoms that people can experience, some of the causes that lead up to depression, and also some effective treatment modalities that people can engage in to help improve, their depressive symptoms and ultimately improve their quality of life. I'm making this video in response to Todd's testimony on what he went through and kind of like how things in his life affected his mood and his quality of life. So please bear with me. This can, some of this will be very, technical and clinical. And, if you need any additional help or resources, please feel free to contact me at any time. So according to be diagnosed with the depression, there's actually 8 diagnostic depressive disorders. Today, I'm going to cover 2 of them. The first one being major depressive disorder and persistent depressive disorder, as those 2 are the most familiar depressive orders that I have worked with the clients that I actively see. But I'm going to first start off with a few, statistics on how much depression affects people and, how much depression affects members of our own community. So depression affects an estimated 17 million people a year. In 2019, or as late as 2019, it was the second leading cause of death of African American men ages 15 to 24. And ages 20 to 24 had the highest rate of suicide among our community, age and male and female. And some of the effects that can cause depression with not, in the community and in other communities as well are genetics, biological factors, environmental factors, and psychological factors. Some of the myths that I would kind of like to dispel, especially in our own community, is this idea that suppressing depressive feelings and not talking about them will somehow help, or the symptoms will just go away, or we look at getting help or acknowledging feelings other than masculinity or being tough, how we look at those feelings as some other feelings are viewed as being weak. And, that is not only is it a myth, it's a very harmful myth, because we are kind of depriving ourselves of the treatment that we deserve and we need to get. The other factors include, there's a general sense of mistrust within the medical community, and that's actually been proven. So we are less likely to seek behavioral health and mental health services, if the person doesn't, look like us or can't relate to our experience. And, that's not a myth. That is a very genuine feeling among, our culture and our people. The other myth that I want to talk about is, medication is like the only way of treating a behavioral health or mental health disorder, that it treats the symptoms a little bit, but it does not treat the cause. There's this myth that we should be strong enough, like I mentioned before. It's great to be strong and it's great to be resilient, but it's not, there's no sign of weakness and resiliency in asking for help. Depression is just sadness. That's part of it, but it can also be displayed as being anger, physical pain, and it also, changes the way we think about a specific situation. With prolonged depression, it does change the way, like, our body and our body chemistry. It changed like a lot of, chemical components in our body that either can prolong the depression or intensify the symptoms of depression. So with that, I'm going to give the two diagnosed depressive disorders and kind of give you the symptoms of each one. So for major depressive disorder, some of the symptoms include, and you have to actually meet 5 of them to be clinically diagnosed with them. For the sake of this video, I wouldn't want to focus on the 5, because if someone met 3 or 4 of them, then those would, depending on the intensity and severity, there are other, depression diagnoses that would actually fit this person. So for major depressive disorder, these symptoms have to be present within the same 2-week period and represent like a significant change in functioning. So one of them is kind of one of the more important ones is a depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by, a subjective report, meaning, you're feeling sad, empty, hopeless, or worthless nearly every day. You're always on the verge of appearing tearful or on the verge of feeling emotionally overwhelmed. The other symptom is a marked diminish or interest in pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. So that means if you had a friend that went through something and they like to do a particular activity, all of a sudden withdrew from that activity and just stopped doing that. And it can be basic stuff from going to take a walk or, hygiene, neglecting their hygiene, neglecting to shower, neglecting to change their clothes, neglecting to clean their house or their apartment or wherever they decide to live. Like, you would notice like a significant change in how they behaved. Another one is significant weight loss. And that can, that relates to, not eating, or, not having all of a sudden like a taste for food, like a diminishing appetite. Insomnia, lack either interrupted sleep, trouble getting to sleep or trouble staying to sleep, or hypersomnia, which is excessive sleeping. So if someone usually sleeps 6 to 8 hours, all of a sudden is sleeping, 14 to 16 hours a day, that is a pretty, significant symptom of a major depressive disorder. Feeling fatigue or loss of energy every day, which kind of goes a little bit in hand with like the loss of interest in wanting to do something or do something they've normally done in the course of a day. Feeling of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. Guilt is a very destructive feeling. It doesn't really have a positive, it doesn't have like a lot of positives, associated with it. Guilty is just a negative self-reflection on what we could have done or what we should have done, knowing that we can't go back in time to change that. Also, diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. Usually that's by like self-report or somebody acknowledging that in another person. And also, the other one, reoccurrent thoughts of death, reoccurrent suicidal ideation. Suicidal ideation is the thought of wanting to take one's life. And there's levels to that as far as like you can have the thought of wanting to die but not have a plan. There's a thought of wanting to die but having a plan, having like a time, a plan, who you're going to inform, how someone would be notified of that, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan to committing suicide. So I mentioned before is some of the symptoms that are prevalent in this, or sometimes genetic, biological, environmental, and psychological factors. So it also says like first-degree family member, genetically first-degree family members of individuals with major depressive disorder have a risk for major depressive disorder 2 or 4-fold higher than those of a general population. Environmental adverse childhood experiences, which means there's an exam or questionnaire that asks questions of adverse childhood experiencing, meaning trauma, abuse, poverty, food insecurity, family support, bullying in school, a poor confidence, poor self-esteem, that is derived from a traumatic upbringing. Those are, especially if there's multiple experiments of very diverse types, they can pose as a potent risk factors for major depressive disorder. Also, stressful life events are well recognized as participants of major depressive disorders as well. So, stressful life events are eviction, homelessness, domestic violence, changing schools, moving from place to place, not having home instability or environmental instability. Also, temperamental neuroticism is a well-established risk factor for the onset of major depressive disorder, and high levels of this appear to render individuals more likely to develop depressive episodes in response to stressful, life events. In working with my population that I work with, a cause of a depressive disorder, even if it's not a major depressive disorder, is trauma in childhood or trauma, throughout childhood into adulthood, and how they poorly adapted to those traumas. And sometimes people that don't engage in behavioral health, they suppress trauma by engaging in high risk behaviors, drinking, drug use, taking risks sexually. Also, people can mask depression in the form of anger. So people can be more likely to want to be more aggressive with others. And underneath, that anger is, that certain level of sadness and, hopelessness that some people feel. The other one is persistent depressive disorder. And some of these are a depressed mood for most of the day, as indicated by either that person self-reporting these symptoms or observation by others. And the difference is these are lasting more than 2 years. Okay. So the other one was at a 2-week period. This is these symptoms have lasted for at least 2 years. So some of these things have to be present during this period of time. Poor appetite or overeating, insomnia or hypersomnia, low energy or fatigue, low self-esteem, feeling of hopelessness. There is also these symptoms cause like a significant impairment or distress in like social situation, work, or other important areas of functioning like relationships, work relationships, social relationships, whatever important domains are critical to that person's, well-being or in their life. During this 2-year period also of the disturbance, that's also, that they've never been without these symptoms for more than 2 months at a time. Some of these one of the major characteristics of persistent depressive disorder, they kind of describe their mood as sad or down in the dumps. And one of the, an example is like, oh, I've always felt this way, or I've always felt, sad. And, some people can't explain, where that sadness or sense of hopelessness comes from. So some of the development of persistent depressive disorder is chronic in nature. So sometimes it can start early, like in childhood or adolescence or early adult life. Some of the risk factors are, temperamental, the factors predictive of poor long-term outcome for this include higher levels of neuroticism, which is negative affectivity, greater symptom severity, and in the presence of anxiety disorders or behavioral or conduct disorders. Environmental factors include childhood parental loss or separation, which can come from domestic violence, divorce, or death or loss of a parent. Genetically, there is not a lot of evidence that there is not clear evidence in the development of it, but there's a number of brain regions like the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, have been implicated in persistent depressive disorder. That's a little bit, if that's something you want to go see like a psychiatrist for or a psychologist for, that is something that they would be able to explore a little bit more deeper. So with these two diagnoses, we've kind of talked about some of the symptoms and some of the factors of it. So now I want to kind of talk about some of the things that we can do to, alleviate these symptoms and not let it, become a very oppressive and, suffocating aspects of our life. The first thing, the number one thing is acknowledgement. There's a saying mental illness is not your fault, but it's your responsibility. As a therapist, I believe in that, 100%. It's not your fault that you have, depression or anxiety or whatever behavioral health illness, but it is your responsibility to take care of it and to address it. So that leads me to saying, one of the first things is acknowledgement of it. The other thing is to, seek help, and honestly, it doesn't have to be professional help. Like if you have a friend that, that you trust and that you can talk to, that will be accepting, of what you have to say. Talk to that person. In our culture, we have especially among us men, we have a hard time or difficult time being vulnerable because we look at vulnerability as weak. We view, the expression of, we view expression of emotions, dealing with sadness and hurt and being vulnerable as weak. And I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it's one of the major things that kind of holds us back in seeking the help that we need. So being vulnerable to someone that you trust is just having someone that you can talk to, not necessarily have to give you advice back or say something that's going to change your life back. Sometimes just saying these things out loud to someone and having someone be receptive of that is very, very important. I cannot understate that, but talk to someone. Doesn't have to be your professional. Just talk to someone, let them know how you're feeling. Sometimes it's a lifestyle change too. If your life is, if your lifestyle is a significant stressor for you that is causing your depression, it could be like a bad relationship, it can be a bad work environment, it can be, a dysfunctional family environment. You can change that. You have the power to change that. And with change, comes an adjustment period that we may not all be comfortable with, but in the long run, it's going to help you. It's going to help you and help your mindset, and you can kind of get off this hamster wheel of the environment, that you're in. The other thing is, the other thing that helps with depression is exercise, physical activity. We call those behavioral activation activities. So there's this list that I kind of give my clients that talks about things they can do to make themselves feel better. And it can be simple stuff as going for a walk, joining a group, going to the movies, eating your favorite food, doing something new, volunteering, doing something for someone else has shown to be very effective in, relieving some symptoms of depression and, quote unquote sadness, because when we do something for other people, most of the time we feel good about ourselves, and feeling good about ourselves is really important to alleviating some of these symptoms of depression. Setting attainable goals for yourself is also a good strategy to do, because when you set attainable goals, you kind of build a foundation of positive moments in your life. So if you set attainable goals, like, hey, I'm going to get out and I'm going to go out and walk one lap around my house, around my neighborhood. That's one small layer of confidence that you're building. But if you do it for a week, now you've done something consistent, and now that foundation gets a little bit stronger, and then that should also help with branching out and finding out what else that you can accomplish during that week or during that specific time period. So that's another one. Remember, that's called behavioral activation, and those are just simple strategies that you can use to improve mood and improve your quality of life. The other one is going the professional route. Getting engaged with a counselor, getting engaged with someone that you feel professionally can relate to you, and sometimes that takes a bit of vulnerability as well, because you're going to be telling the most painful parts of your life to a complete stranger, which I understand and respect the difficulty in doing that. But in the long run, if you can find someone that is empathic to your needs and that can relate to your experience, it will go a long way, and you'll have someone that's also unbiased, to what you're going through and to your situation. And because a lot of people fear the judgment of being vulnerable, and when you see someone professionally, that's one less worry that you don't have to come in with. in addition to that, going a step further, and we're going to kind of like the body chemistry of this, sometimes, depression does affect our body chemistry. So sometimes there is a medication management portion of therapy that also might be important. And I'm not here to advocate for or against medication or psychiatry. I want to leave that to that individual, and in how what their personal beliefs are about medication management. But I will say, you can meet with the psychiatrist and ask all the questions that you have, and then if you don't like the answer, you don't have to necessarily take what that person's prescribing. You can go do, it can give you a better idea of like what pathway that you would like to go on. But I don't want to rule that out as well, because sometimes it can, like I said, it does help with the symptoms, but also with combined with therapy, it also kind of helps with kind of the etiology of it, and kind of help with the core root of whatever is making that person depressed. I think the most important thing is, depression can be very overwhelming for someone, and one of the things that we do is we hide it from people. And it's like putting on a different face, a different mask. And imagine the emotional and mental effort it takes to be somebody that you're not each and every day, and having trying to be this happy person every day, or this person that's always outgoing and easy to get along with every day, but knowing internally you don't feel that way. You probably feel that you just want to be in your bed away from everybody and not wanting to talk to anybody. Imagine that emotional weight of trying to be something or feel something that you're not. That can be, not only is it exhausting, it's very harmful to our psyche. So if you're feeling a specific way, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling worthless, I don't want to say it's okay, but it's something, if it's something you can't avoid, you can't hide that. You have to seek help for that. So I strongly encourage everyone that may be feeling that way, who may be hiding how they're feeling, who may feel like, they're not ready to be vulnerable, yet think about kind of the long-term harm, holding that in and not accessing your true feelings, how harmful that is to your personal self. So I definitely encourage everyone to seek the help that they need. If they need it, you deserve it. There's no shame. There's no weakness in that. There's no softness involved in that. You would take care of everything else if there was a problem with it. Like if you wanted to lose weight, you would exercise, right? If your car was broke, you would take it to a mechanic. If something was broke in the house, you would try to fix it or find somebody, that could repair it. That's no different from how we should treat ourselves, okay? And it's a form of self-care. It's a form of self-maintenance. And, I highly suggest, for those seeking out help, go seek it, because you deserve it. You deserve a good life. You deserve, to learn the tools necessarily to handle adversity, handle when things go wrong, handle when life is very difficult for you. Like that's a part of it. And, you owe it to yourself to build a foundation to where you're able, so depression doesn't become a debilitating or an overwhelming presence in your life. Oh, so with that being said, please pardon the interruptions and me trying to express what I wanted to say. I had a lot of things going in my mind that I couldn't quite express well. I hope this was useful, and I hope this was informative to Todd's audience. I think what he's doing is a great thing. I think it would be very important and very helpful to those, and I'm very, very, very honored to be a part of that journey and to help when I can. So thank you.
So that was my journey Again, I didn't know it was depression. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I didn't feel well. And the more I felt unwell, the more bad things and trauma and, situations and things I was getting into, which made the whole situation worse, which when you're already in that mental state, you're not thinking right. And, that's what caused me to, consider, ending my own life. I hate to even say it now because it's kind of unbelievable being on this point and thinking back to where I was back then mentally. It's a space I never thought I would be in. It just seemed to consume me all at once, but really it was a gradual process with things happening, and I wasn't taking care of myself properly. I wasn't taking care of my mental properly. I really needed professional help because I didn't know what the feelings were. I didn't know how to rectify how I was feeling, and I was still in the same situation. So when you're in the same situation with all these things happening and you're not in a good mental space, it's all a boiling pot for disaster, which I'm glad disaster didn't happen. I'm glad at some point I was able to get help and discover meditation and breathing techniques and therapy and get back to working out and things like that took my mind off it. And the therapist was able to give me strategies and techniques to get to a better place, to alleviate some of the things I was feeling, to identify some of the things I was feeling. That's when I realized I was dealing with a deep depression, and it's very dangerous for a lot of people because, like I said, you're not in the right frame of mind. So any little thing could trigger you, and I'm sure there are people, unfortunately, that have ended their lives that thought in a moment of, they were caught in a moment and thought, and there's no coming back from that. A good friend of mine in high school committed suicide. I know a bunch of people that committed suicide. So hopefully this video helps somebody. Hopefully my story makes other people think about, the journeys they've been through. And if you need help, please get help. Please don't do what I did. I did initially, actually for a long time, the opposite of what my therapist told me. I drank a lot, which in me, it just made the situation worse. It was like a depressant for me, and I was already depressed. I was in a lot of situations I shouldn't have been in because I didn't care anymore, really about living or dying for a long period of time. And a lot of the things that were happening with me, I just continued. I isolated. They tell you not to isolate, but thank goodness I had people around me, like I discussed in the video, that I wasn't the person I am now at the time. So I thank the universe for that, man, because without them, I don't know that I would have made it through. I had people around me that were checking on me. I had people around me that I could go and be a sanctuary and they didn't judge me, and I could just get peace for a minute, take a deep breath, and then get back at it. I had my mother that was always there. So it's good to have a support system as well. So keep positive people around you. And thank you, Seneca, for the professional advice, because I'm just one man. This is just my personal story. I'm not a professional, but unfortunately, in going through this, I've gave advice for other people going through this. I don't say it unfortunately like I shouldn't give advice. It's unfortunate that so many people go through depression, and in the holiday season, it gets a lot worse. I know I didn't even, I wasn't even in the mood to celebrate holidays, nor my birthday for like years and years. I was always super down at this time of year. So anybody going through that, I pray it gets better. I pray you get help. And I pray that this video, not by anything I have other than, my heart, my family, and the people you see around me, no material thing I have defines me. But hopefully by that, it shows you that you can get to a better space. A different life is possible. Because if the person I was back then, if someone could have went and said, in some years, you're going to be in another state, you're going to have another baby, you'll be married again, I would have told them they were crazy. But even besides that, if someone had told me that I have the frame of mind that I have now, I still deal with, occasional things here and there, anxiety and things like that. But overall, I know I'm never allowing myself to go back to that dark place. I'm in a different mental space, and back then I would have never thought I got here. So I thank everyone. I thank my family. I thank my friends. I thank my people. Like, honestly, without y'all, I might not be here. Yeah, it makes me a little emotional to think about it, but I'm thankful for that. I tell my people that all the time. Like, and it's easy to take it for granted when you don't deal with these issues, but when you do, when you come out the other side, and I know for me, in that instance, those years when I was going through that, I wasn't the person I am now. I blew up on people a lot. I did a lot of things I probably shouldn't have did, and it was all because I didn't know how to deal with what I had inside of me. So seek someone like Seneca, seek positive people around you, change your environment, and hopefully this will help you, because it's helped me immensely. I wish I had something like this to watch when I was going through that, and I hope that this is just helpful to somebody. If it's helpful to somebody, I'm happy with it. Like, that's the purpose of this, because it's hard for me to talk about. But again, I'm glad that I'm able to see the other side of it now, and I'm happy now, which is something I realized I wasn't for a long time, and it became one of them things that I didn't realize how unhappy I was till I was outside of the situation that was causing me unhappiness, and I was in a better frame of mind. So there is something on the other side, and I know, lastly, it's tough for people that don't deal with this, that haven't dealt with this, to understand. I explain some of these things to my wife, because thank goodness she hasn't dealt with it, but she has a husband that does sometimes. So I explained to her that this is something that, it just doesn't just go away. I think I'll be dealing with this the rest of my life, but I know I have the tools to deal with it. But when people aren't familiar with it and they tell you things, which occasionally they do, not my wife, but just people in general, and I don't think they mean any harm, like brush it off, it's nothing, you'll get through it. I just want those people that don't deal with depression to realize that's a dangerous thing to say to somebody that's in a frame of mind that's not all the way there anyway, a frame of mind that's kind of like damaged and clouded. There's a different way to do it, and ask them, support them. Don't take it as a joke, because you only have one chance. You guess wrong, it could be the difference between life or death for somebody. So that's all I have to say. I'm gonna get off of this. I have some other videos coming discussing mental health, and thank you for watching the video. It was tough to make. Thank my man Seneca. He's super good at what he does, a licensed professional. He comes with a clinical point of view. I just came with life experience. So thanks for watching the video, and until next time.